If you take a walk through this quiet forest preserve in Willow Springs, you'll find a granite marker that reads, "Caution, do not dig." Most people walk right past it, but beneath their feet lies the radioactive debris from early nuclear research conducted here in the 1940s, part of the same program that changed the world forever, the Manhattan Project. And the mystery that is buried here in the woods is not the first time Chicagolanders changed the world. In fact, much of the modern world was actually beta tested in Chicagoland. The amount of stuff that was invented, built, or pioneered in this region is actually kind of absurd when you start adding it all up. And most people, including people who've lived here their entire lives, have no idea just how deep this list goes. So today we're running through just some of the major Chicagoland firsts I could find, even though there's so many more. But guys, before we get into it, I want to thank all of you who have been so kind for liking, subscribing, and commenting. That engagement is what helps a channel like this grow. And I want nothing more than to consistently put out quality content that you guys love. So thank you to everyone who has come aboard with me. I will not disappoint you. All right, let's get into it. We're starting with a big one. The one that literally reshaped the skyline of every major city on the planet. In 1885, an architect named William LeBaron Jenney completed the home insurance building in downtown Chicago, 10 stories, 138 feet tall. By today's standard, that's a parking garage, but in 1885, it was a miracle. And what made it different from everything that came before was the frame. Instead of stacking heavier and heavier masonry walls to go higher, which is how people had built tall structures for thousands of years, Jenney used a steel skeleton. He used thin columns of steel to hold the weight. The walls became curtains, not load-bearing structures. That was the skyscraper, born in Chicago. Now, some architectural historians will argue about whether the home insurance building was technically the first true skyscraper, because it used some cast iron alongside the steel. But what nobody argues about is that Chicago pioneered the concept, perfected the engineering, and then built an entire skyline to prove it worked. And they had to, because in 1871, the Great Chicago Fire wiped out 3.3 square miles of the city center. Imagine the pressure. You had a charred, empty city and a population that needs to get back to work. They had to rebuild fast, and they had to rebuild fireproof. So they innovated. The Chicago School of Architecture didn't just change the skyline, it provided the new blueprint for the modern metropolis. New York got tall later. Chicago got tall first. But Chicago didn't just invent how we live in cities, it invented how we buy things. In 1872, Aaron Montgomery Ward produced the first mail order catalog right here. Before Amazon, before the internet, there was a single sheet of paper from Chicago that allowed people in the middle of nowhere to buy anything they needed. It was the birth of modern retail. And while Chicago was busy connecting the country through the mail, other pioneers in the city were looking much deeper into the very building blocks of matter. December 2nd, 1942. Underneath the west stands of Stagg Field at the University of Chicago, a team led by physicist Enrico Fermi achieved the first controlled, self-sustaining nuclear chain reaction in human history. They called the reactor Chicago Pile 1. They did this under the bleachers of a football stadium in the middle of a residential neighborhood in Hyde Park. Think about that. While people were walking their dogs outside, the most dangerous and revolutionary experiment in history was happening right under some concrete stairs. There was no cooling system. There was no radiation shield. The control rods were made of cadmium. And one guy, literally one guy, stood on a platform above the reactor with an axe. His job? If the reaction went out of control, he would chop a rope that would drop an emergency safety rod into the pile. According to nuclear lore, he was the Safety Control Rod Axeman, giving us the acronym SCRAM. While the origin of the term is debated, the Axeman was real, and the emergency shutdown system was absolutely necessary. This was a massive milestone for the Manhattan Project. and it was top secret. During the war, they moved major parts of the operation out to the forest preserves. They eventually buried the radioactive material and contaminated debris right there in the woods. Today, you can hike to Redgate Woods and see a granite marker that says, "Caution, do not dig." People walk past it all the time. Most have no idea that the atomic age started in a Chicago neighborhood next to a football field. It's wild to think that that technology that ended a world war started right under some stadium bleachers, but that's not the only world-changing tech Chicago struggled to keep its name on. Two stories here, and both of them involve Chicago getting robbed of the credit. Story 1, 1876. An inventor named Elijah Gray, living in Highland Park, filed a patent caveat for an acoustic telephone on the exact same day Alexander Graham Bell filed his in Boston. Legend says Bell's lawyers literally ran to the patent office to get their paperwork processed just a few hours before Gray's. What followed was years of lawsuits, but history mostly remembers the guy in Boston. Story 2, in 1973, a Motorola engineer named Martin Cooper made the first public handheld cell phone call. Motorola was a Chicagoland company. The phone, the Dynatac, was the size of a brick and weighed 2.5 pounds. Cooper made the call while walking down a street in Manhattan, and he called his rival at Bell Labs, Joel Engel, just to rub it in. He basically invented trolling at the same time he invented the cell phone. And while we're talking about Motorola, the Galvin brothers founded the company on Chicago's west side back in 1928. They eventually built a massive legacy out in Schaumburg, but their first product was the commercially successful car radio built right here in the city. They called it the Motorola, combining motor and Ola from Victrola. Every morning commute where the radio pulled you through traffic, that started in a Chicago workshop. Now, while Motorola revolutionized how we talk and travel, other Chicagolanders figured out how to keep us alive. On July 10, 1893, a surgeon named Dr. Daniel Hale Williams performed one of the earliest successful heart surgeries in the world. This happened at Provident Hospital on the South Side. The patient, James Cornish, had been stabbed in the chest, and his pericardium, the sac around the heart, was torn. Without the modern tools we have today, he opened the chest, sutured the wound, and Cornish survived another 20 years. He changed the course of cardiac surgery in a hospital he had established himself. Then there's the blood bank. Dr. Bernard Fantis at Cook County Hospital was tired of seeing people die because blood wasn't available when they needed it. He developed techniques to preserve blood for up to 10 days. He coined the term blood bank in 1937. Millions of lives are saved every year because Fantis realized blood shouldn't just be donated, it should be stored. That spirit of, if it doesn't exist, we'll build it ourselves, wasn't just in the hospitals. It was the entire theme of the biggest party Chicago ever threw. The 1893 World's Columbian Exposition was held on the South Side, and the inventions that debuted there are staggering. Now, many people know about this one, but we gotta cover it. The Ferris wheel. George Washington Gale Ferris Jr. built it as Chicago's answer to the Eiffel Tower. The original was a monster 264 feet tall, and each car was the size of a bus, holding 60 people. Then there's the brownie. Bertha Palmer wanted a dessert for boxed lunches at the fair. Her kitchen at the Palmer House Hotel created the brownie. They still serve them there today, using the original 1893 recipe. And the zipper, Whitcomb Judson showed off his class blocker at the fair. It was a clunky ancestor of the zipper, ignored at the time, but it planted the seed for what became the modern zipper. Juicy Fruit and Cracker Jack, both of these iconic snacks debuted at the fair. Actually, Chicago was essentially the candy capital of the world for a century. The fair attracted more than 25 million visitors at a time when the entire US population was only about 63 million. It introduced the country to electric lighting on a scale never seen before, and gave us the concept of the Midway. The fair was a massive spectacle, but the truth is, Chicagoland was churning out inventions every single day that we still use in our homes right now. We're not done. I've got a stack of rapid fire first that proves Chicagoland is the engine of the everyday world. Spray paint, 1949. Edward Seymour in Sycamore, Illinois. His wife suggested he put paint in an aerosol can. Every rattle can in every hardware store? That's a Chicagoland invention. Now, I think his wife deserves some credit on that one too, huh? The vacuum cleaner, 1869. Ives McGaffey's Whirlwind was the first U.S. patent for a vacuum-style machine. It was made of wood and canvas and had to be hand-cranked while pushing. Twinkies in 1930. James Dewar in Schiller Park. Originally filled with banana cream, they switched to vanilla during World War II because of banana rationing. Softball, 1887, started at the Farragut Boat Club when someone hit a boxing glove with a broomstick. The first car race, like the first ever car race, 1895. The first automobile race in America happened on Thanksgiving Day, running from Jackson Park to Evanston and back through a blizzard. The TV remote, 1955. Zenith, based in Chicago. It was a strange-looking device, and it used light to change channels. The dishwasher, 1886. Josephine Cochran, a socialite in Shelbyville, got tired of her servants breaking her china. She invented the first reliable mechanical dishwasher and debuted it at the Chicago World's Fair. McDonald's, 1955. While the brothers started in Cali, Ray Kroc opened the first franchise location in Des Plaines. This is where the global empire was actually built. It started here. Barbed wire in 1874, the modern silo, 1873, also pinball. Chicago became the pinball factory of the world for decades, and most giants of the pinball industry all started right here. So there you have it. Chicagoland isn't just a place with great pizza and a beautiful lakefront. It is the literal workshop of the modern world. Whether you're checking your phone, driving your car, or living in a high-rise, you're interacting with the Chicagoland first. Before I sign off, I want to double back and thank you guys one more time. Seeing the comments and the likes on these videos means the world to me. If you learned something new today, or if I missed your favorite Chicagoland invention, let me know in the comments below. All right, that's it for today's episode of Chicagoland History.